We're so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I am Maya Phelps, and we're so excited to have you joined with us today. In today's webinar, we are so excited to be joined by Brooke Hansen. Brooke is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She received her master's degree in marriage and family therapy from Utah State University in 2020 and her bachelor's in psychology in 2016. While in school, she did different internships working with post-adopt families, children families, and couples. She soon realized her passion for working with couples and found herself taking a course from the Gottmans, who are the leading researchers in couples counseling that was based in helping couples heal from trauma and affairs. And this is where her passion started. She has started her own practice, Unity Counseling, in 2023 in Kaysville, Utah, and has been working there full time since then. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, type them in the Q&A box that is down below. The chat will be turned off, so if you have any questions, you're going to need to put them there. If you have joined us for the CEU credit, make sure you stay on until the end of the presentation. The survey needed for your credit will automatically load onto your screen, and then you will receive the email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You can also email the Utah Marriage Commission, which is at marriagecommission@usu.edu, to receive your survey on this webinar if it doesn't pull up. Once the survey is completed, you will attain an email with your CEU credit certification. We will now turn the time over to Brooke for her presentation.
All right, thanks so much, Naya. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm excited to do this. Like Naya was saying, this is one of my passions, helping couples and especially helping couples heal from affairs. I know there's a lot of rhetoric around affairs and what that means for your relationship, but I just want to let people know that there is hope. I've seen plenty of relationships, marriages come back from affairs. So just because that's what your relationship has gone through, it doesn't mean that it has to be over. Um, so I'm going to start off with my presentation because there's a lot to cover tonight. I'm hoping we can cover it all. If not, though, maybe I'll get invited back to do like a part two or something. So I'm going to start by sharing my slideshow. Let me get that pulled up here. Excuse me, 1 second. That was ready to go and now I just lost it. All right. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see this okay. Like I already said, the topic today is healing your relationship after an affair. Um, I want to tell a little bit about myself, just so you know where I'm coming from. I know Nia did kind of present about that already, but born and raised in Utah. Um, I've lived in northern Utah the majority of my life, especially Davis County. I was raised in Farmington, now live in Layton. My practice is in Kaysville, so very familiar with that area. I did get my bachelor's and master's at USU, and my master's was in marriage and family therapy. I do love the Gottmans, and I'll tell you a bit more about the Gottmans in a sec because their research is very important, and I'm going to be using that throughout this presentation too. But I've completed Gottman Level 1 training as well as the training on treating affairs and trauma. I did start practicing therapy while in grad school in 2018. I've been seeing clients consistently since then. And like Naya said, I opened my practice back in 2023. So let's talk a little about the Gottmans because this is going to be really important. And I want you guys bought into how amazing their research is. So this is Dr. John and Julie Gottman. They are such a cute couple. They are married and do research together on couples. And they've got over 4 decades of experience with researching and working with couples. And they've actually gotten to the point that with 90% accuracy, they can sit down with the couple they've just met, watch them discuss a conflict for about 10 minutes, and know whether or not that couple will be together within the next 7 years, which is mind blowing. Like the fact that we have that type of research out there, I just think is the coolest thing in the world. And so they've shared information with myself and other therapists and also the public. You can find so many great things on their blogs. And no, this is not sponsored by them, so I'm not getting paid for saying any of this. I just like helping people, and I think this is a great resource to have. So, like I said, I'm going to be pulling a lot of things from their research and their efforts to help you guys find healing. I did want to throw this out here too. I know that they have a Q&A for this webinar tonight. I'm not sure if there's a way to do Q&As with like anonymity. So I did want to just give you guys my office cell phone number. If you want to take a screenshot of this, feel free to do that. But feel free to text this number throughout this presentation if you have questions and you're worried about your name being out there on the Q&A. Um, that does mean that I will have, your phone number on my phone, but I will in no way be using that phone number to contact you or do anything with that phone number. So just be aware of that. And I'll try to have my phone open right here too to kind of be looking at that as well as hopefully Naya's keeping your eye on the Q&A. I appreciate questions throughout, so don't feel like you have to hold off on your questions until the very end. Feel free to just ask those questions as we go. Okay. All right. Give you one more second to like take a picture, or put this number in your phone or whatever you need. And we're going to move on. So I want to start out with talking about what even is an affair because the old definition of an affair seems like it was more about just, having sex with somebody outside of your relationship. We started learning more and more throughout the years, though, that affairs can be much more than that. So here's some definitions I found. The first definition just found on verywellmind.com, but I really, really like the way it was worded. It says an affair is an emotionally intense romantic relationship with someone other than your spouse or partner. Sex may or may not be involved, and the two people may not have even met in person, which can occur in an online or cyber affair. So again, there can be sex involved. It can just be emotionally involved with somebody, but all those things still fall underneath the umbrella of an affair. This is another quote from the Gottman Institute, kind of talking a little bit more about emotional affairs, which I'll get into here in a second as well. But emotional affairs are, let me move. I have this little screen sharing thing. Okay, there we go. It says a lot of people argue about what constitutes an emotional affair. In the Gottman method, we believe it starts when a person gets too close to someone other than his or her relationship partner. Often, these relationships begin innocently enough, but they grow into something very dangerous. Okay, and we'll talk a little more about that because I feel like with physical affairs, it's a little bit easier to define what that is. With emotional affairs, it can be a little bit more complex. Oops. I do kind of want to throw in a little head nod to polyamory as well. Affairs can happen within polyamorous relationships. A lot of times that will look more like, I mean, in any polyamorous relationship, most often than not, people need to talk a little bit more about what the boundaries are for their relationship. And again, if someone goes outside of those boundaries, say that, they're able to, have relations with these certain people, but then they go and have relations with somebody who is not discussed with to their spouse or the people who are in that relationship with them, that also constitutes an affair. For the sake of this presentation, I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on monogamous relationships, but just know a lot of these principles that I'll be teaching today can also apply to polyamorous relationships as well. So let's talk about different types of affairs. There's really four categories that I can put these under. If you look online, some people have like 7 or 8 categories, but I feel like even all those just fall into these four basic ones. We've got emotional affairs, physical affairs, multiple affairs, and cyber affairs. So let's just start with an emotional affair. An emotional affair, I like these stages that Aspen Grove Wellness came out with. So it starts out as something as simple as just being friends with somebody. Oftentimes you have, mutual interests or things that you just both have in common. But then where it starts getting into a little bit more dangerous territory is when it starts going farther than just a friendship. So, like it says here on step 2, there can be increased thoughts and anticipation about interacting with this so-called friend. And a lot of times where I start seeing it cross that boundary into more of the emotional affair is people actually stop sharing as much about this friend with their spouse or their partner, and they start keeping more and more secrets about the dynamics of this friendship. So that often can also lead to step 3, which is a space of complaining. Oftentimes, what we'll see with emotional affairs is once this starts crossing the boundary of, you're kind of getting interested in this person that was just a friend before, you'll start complaining about your relationship to this so-called friend. And what that actually puts you in the Gottmans call a negative comparison trap, where we start taking the worst parts of our long-term relationship that we've had time to really see all those not so great qualities and comparing it to this friend who we don't know as much about. So everything looks shiny and new and great with this person. And that can be extremely dangerous to the relationship too and push people farther into an affair. Um, a lot of times this can lead to, physical attraction like flirting, having fantasies about the other person. Um, it doesn't always happen that way, but a lot of times it does. And normally, when we start seeing an emotional affair happen as well, or even any type of affair, there's a lot of turning away from your partner, meaning that instead of sharing things that you used to with your partner, you're now sharing less and less with them and starting to share more and more with this so-called friend. Sometimes this can lead to physical things as well, like turning into more of a physical affair as well as an emotional one. Um, I skipped step 6 too. A lot of times there's discontent because you're feeling dissatisfied with your primary relationship. And like I said, you start idealizing this friend. And then, like I said, some emotional affairs turn physical. Not all of them do, but some do. Um, all affairs hurt and are painful. And I don't think there's a comparison really, but I have heard people say when there's an emotional aspect of the affair, that sometimes is one of the most painful parts. So there's another quote here from the Gottman Institute that talks about emotional infidelity. It says that the signs of this emotional infidelity are confiding in, flirting, keeping the relationship a secret from the partner, sharing details about their personal life, especially negative details about the partner and their relationship. People who get involved in emotional affairs find themselves making negative comparisons between their partner and the friend. They see their friend as being funnier, more interesting, more attractive, easier to talk to, more interested in them, and more understanding. And again, that's where it can get really, really sticky and go south really fast when it comes to these affairs. I'm just going to check my phone really fast, see if there's any questions yet. I think we're looking good there. I can't see a way to actually pull up the questions on my side. So Naya, just jump in, please, if you see any questions that are coming up. So talking about physical affairs, these can come in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's a one night stand where honestly people just a lot of times this involves drugs or alcohol where there's a lapse in judgment and it's not an excuse by any means. But the person wakes up the next morning kind of with an oh crap attitude of what did I just do? And it's more of that one night thing. Some affairs are short term or long term, going ranging from anywhere from a few days to years. All of them still are hurtful and painful and are affairs. Some relationships are just about the sex. Some of these physical relationships are romantic and with feelings and even falling in love. So there's a lot of complexities to all of this, but that's a lot of the aspects of physical affairs and how that can differ from each affair. There are also multiple affairs that can occur. And sorry, that image is a little bit blurry, but these get really complex. And often what I've seen can cause the most damage is when it's not just a one-time occurrence. So multiple affairs, this can look like with multiple people, that it's not just one person you're having an affair with, but it's multiple people. And it can even be that you're cheating on the person that you're already cheating with, so like it can get really complex like that. It can also, multiple affairs can also be that it's not just a one-time like thing, like for a year that you've been seeing this person, but maybe you take a year break and you're like, hey, I just want to work on my relationship. But then even a few years down the road, you're back with that same person again. So there's multiple incidents going on like that. So that's kind of the multiple affairs aspect there. Cyber affairs are what they sound like. It's an online affair. This can be an emotional affair that you're having online. It can be just not just, but explicitly like a sexual affair where there's like sexting involved. or it can be both. Cyber affairs can lead to like seeing people in person, but a lot of them just stay on the cyber side too. So those are the main types of affairs, and there probably are a lot of other affairs that I'm not explaining, but those are kind of the main categories. So if you're wondering whether or not it's been an affair, hopefully that gives you some context to understand and help you make some decisions about, what you've either done or what your partner has done, and now have steps to move forward. So one of the most important things to do is when you do find out that, your partner spouse has had an affair, or if you've had an affair, you need to decide, are you going to stay with your original relationship or are you going to go? And Stephen Vertucci, I believe is his name, he was quoted on the Gottman blog, though. He's an expert divorce attorney, and he came up with a few questions to ask yourself to try to help you make a decision with what you want to do. The first question to ask yourself is, are you interested in making amends? So is this something that like you are just completely done? There's no way you even want to try to forgive this person. It's too painful, you're done. Then probably not worth working on it. And honestly, it's probably best to just go your own ways. Um, for the sake of this conversation tonight, I'm going to be focusing more on people who do stay and work on the relationship. But I think this is an important aspect too, if depending on where you're at with finding out about the affair or talking about the affair, this is a good starting point. So another question too is, will you be able to let go of your anger or resentment towards the partner and move forward? And I actually would like to rephrase that a little bit. I would put, do you want to be able to let go of your anger and resentment? Because I think a lot of people I've met with, they don't know if they even can let go because there's that much pain going on. So if that's something that you would like to see if you even can do, then it might be worth staying and working on it. If you're not, then it's okay. It's okay to say it's too much for me and leave too. And can you imagine being happy with your partner despite what they did? Or again, I want to switch that to, would you like to be happy with your partner again? Um, that's kind of different because sometimes people can't even imagine because again of the trauma they're going through, and we'll talk about the trauma in a moment as well. I think another important thing too, and this is more for the partner that was betrayed, is trying to consider some risk factors. Now I put a little crystal ball, that's what that picture is at the bottom. I so wish there was a way to have a crystal ball to find out if this person is ever going to cheat again, because honestly, that's what I hear time and time again. The biggest hiccup to working on the relationship, and hiccup is such a trivial word to use for that, but is they're like, but I just don't know if they're going to hurt me like this again. And it's so hard to try to rebuild that trust that they won't do that. So I think this is the best thing, is just weighing out potential risk factors to help you make that decision of, again, is it worth, trying to work on, or is there too many risk factors that maybe you need to look a different way with what you're going to do with your relationship? So you can kind of read through some of these, like, do they think cheating is morally wrong or unethical? Are they very dismissive about their perspective on the cheating or your perspective on the cheating? Are they able to take responsibility for what happened? Are they owning it, or is there a lot of blaming going on? Is there a long history of lies and deception, not just with, other men or other women, but with other things in your relationship? Are they able to communicate openly, or, are things kind of secretive still? And are they actually able to empathize with the pain and the distrust caused by the cheating, or are they really defensive about that? So I think these are some things to, again, kind of consider. Again, a lot of these I got from just different Gottman websites. You can Google these and find more information on this as well. But Definitely things to consider when trying to figure out if you should stay or go. I do want to talk a little about betrayal and betrayal trauma. So I think a lot of us have seen this meme about, the girl like, is he thinking about another woman? And the guy's just like, ooh, not thinking about anything. Um, Betrayal trauma, we've done research on it and found that betrayal trauma mirrors PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm hoping that soon we can actually have it as a diagnosis. Right now, it's not a diagnosis we can actually use, but betrayal trauma has flashbacks just like PTSD does, except the flashbacks are images that their mind's already created from what they've heard about the affair or what they haven't heard and they're imagining could be happening. Betrayal trauma can lead to disturbances in sleep, nightmares, intense anxiety, panic attacks, um, well, pretty much all the symptoms that happen with PTSD. And it is very awful to go through. I can't even put words into it. It is so, so painful to have your brain triggered into this betrayal trauma response. There are ways to heal from it, but I do believe in what the Gottmans have shown is one of the best ways to work through it is through healing with your relationship, if that's possible. But I would definitely recommend for anyone who has been betrayed like this, individual therapy. And then if you've decided to work on your relationship, definitely couples therapy as well. But just be aware of this and also the partner that did the betraying. I think it's super important for them to know that there's going to be things that just don't make sense, like little triggers that happen throughout the day and probably daily for the first while, where it will feel like out of the blue that the spouse or partner that was betrayed is all of a sudden pulling up things from the affair and lashing out, getting super angry over things that you don't understand why and how they're even connecting that to the affair. That's all trauma. Those are all trauma responses. I'm going to try to get through as much as I can about how to help navigate those so you guys can rebridge the connection instead of getting more and more pulled away from each other. I'm going to check really quick, see if there's any more questions. All right, we're doing good. Um, I thought this was fine too. Hopefully, this throws in a little bit of humor from a really serious topic. So, all right, so the healing process. I really like this image. I think it really portrays what this process is going to look like. It's not pretty, guys. This might be one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life when you are healing from an affair, or if any therapists are listening today, helping couples heal from affairs. In this picture, you can see like it's just slowly picking up fragmented pieces and trying to glue them back in. There's this piece on the right that, oh, I didn't even realize that's the Savior's hand over there. But I was just even thinking too, like with any healing going on, there's going to be like this glass that you're putting together and it's sharp and it's going to be painful as you try to heal. And so it takes time and it's going to be brutal, but I can promise you guys, if you're both willing to work through it, you'll be able to get to the other side and have even a stronger and happier marriage than before. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this healing process. First step it really takes is this is just terms that the Gottmans use, so I'm using them. The betrayer and the betrayed. Okay. So the betrayer has to come forward and make a confession. A lot of times people think like, oh, I just don't want to hurt my spouse. Like I'm done with that affair. It's over. They're not even a part of my life anymore. I'm never going to contact them again. If I tell my spouse or my partner, it's just going to hurt them more, and I don't want to cause them any pain. Unfortunately, if you do that, it's actually only going to make the betrayal worse when it does come to light. Um, I've worked with couples who have waited years to tell their partner. I've worked with couples who tell their partner right away after they have an affair. And the couples that do better are the ones that just come forth and tell first, because that's going to be the first step in regaining trust. If you wait, it's going to be all the harder because then you're going to have years of wondering like, well, was there more going on because they didn't tell me and they took them this long to tell me, right? So making that first step, it's going to be brutal. And yes, there's the question that I hear from a lot of the people who have stepped outside the marriage of what if I lose my family? What if I lose my partner? And unfortunately, that's a risk that you're going to have to take if you really want this to be a fruitful and meaningful relationship. Um, if you're keeping secrets like that, a lot of times they do come forward eventually, and it's going to be more painful. So this is going to be the first step to rebuilding trust is just confessing and telling them everything. Okay. Um, I use this be prepared because again, when you do make that confession to your partner, there's a lot of different responses you can get. So I want you guys to kind of be aware of what could happen. Sometimes there's very emotional um, responses to that, sobbing, hysterics, anger, intense anger towards you. It can be even people just being silent or even needing space and asking to have a separation for some time to figure things out. Um, it can be just asking for a divorce right then and there. But the job of the betrayer is to be along for the ride. Okay. Of course, I do not condone any sort of verbal or physical abuse. That's never okay either. So that's not what I'm talking about. But with the emotional side that's going to be coming, um, that's kind of like an infection that like you have to get the infection out in order for the wound to heal. Um, the betrayed is going to need to have that cleansing happen and get those emotions out. And if you're able to just listen and support and love and be there, it's going to make the process smoother. And that's what's going to create a lot of healing and actually rebuild trust in your marriage or your relationship. We'll talk more about that here in a second, too. So, oh, shoot. It was supposed to come up differently. That's okay, though. So, how to listen. We're going to go into some steps. Again, by the Gottmans, they teach you about this. And this is also just good for any relationship, whether or not there's been an affair or not. Um, Knowing how to listen will help you leap some bounds. So for preventing or coming back from an affair, start here. So how to listen. You're going to postpone your own agenda and try to hear the other person's pain. Where most people get caught up with listening is when they hear something that they don't agree with, they tend to jump in and try to correct or give their perspective or explain why it wasn't exactly that way. That's actually extremely invalidating. And can sometimes make you come off as like you thinking you're more superior than the other person because you know what happened. So the whole goal is postpone what you want to do, where you want to go with the conversation, and hear the pain, even if you don't agree with the details. Okay. So you can hear the pain of, I am just so hurt and upset that this has happened in our relationship. And if your partner or spouse says something like, because you're such a jerk and all these other things, they might be believing that at that time. But coming back to, okay, I can agree with, yes, like they're in pain from what I've done, and I can empathize with that. That's where you need to be able to go. The next one is ask open-ended questions. Okay, so a lot of times what we do is we just listen, but then it doesn't go anywhere. I want you to kind of think about an iceberg. A lot of times there's just a little bit of ice showing at the top, and then there's this deep mass under the surface. What helps you get to that root of what's going on is open-ended questions. And what's going to help build empathy is open-ended questions. So when somebody is talking about their emotions, if you're just like, uh, all right, sorry, I, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm a jerk. That's actually not going to get as far as, okay, tell me more, like, I can see this is so painful for you. What hurts the most? That's going to show that you're actually invested with your partner, and that's going to invite them to go deeper and connect more with you as well. And that's going to show them that they can trust you with their emotions and you're not just going to run away or shut them down. Okay. The next part is super important. Oh, let me go back. I thought I animated those last two, but I guess not. So summarizing. Summarizing is going to be big, and a lot of people miss this step. So when you hear what your partner says, I want you all to summarize back what you just heard to make sure you understood it correctly. This really helps the person that's sharing know that, first of all, they communicated their thoughts and feelings correctly and that you actually understood. Because a lot of times, I'm going to say this slow, a lot of times we think we understand, but they don't know that we understood. Okay. Kind of like a Friends thing. If you think of Phoebe and Joey, I don't know if you guys see that episode, but they don't know that we know that they know. Anyway, I'm a Friends fan. So make sure you always summarize and then double check and say, like, did I hear you right? Did I get that right? And if they said no, not quite, then go back to the asking open-ended questions, summarize back what they correct you on, and ask again, did I get it this time? Don't move on to the last step until you get a yes, you got it. Okay. So last step is validating. So a lot of people, they don't actually understand what validating is. I've seen quite a few clients come in and just say like, okay, I validate what you're saying. I'm like, that's actually not validation. What validation is actually feeling with what the other person is experiencing. Now, for affairs, there is no way to understand what the betrayed is feeling. But what you can do is we all share human emotions, but we just experience them in different like experiences throughout life. So even though I might not know what it's like for my partner to cheat on me, I might know what it's like to feel rejected or to have been lied to. And so trying to connect there is going to help you be able to connect with them, at least for a small part. There's no way to understand all of it. So also don't say things like, I totally understand what you're saying or what you're going through, because you don't. Okay. But going through my favorite way to start a validating statement is it makes sense why you're feeling blank and then insert with the emotion. Okay. It's really important too to make sure that if you're really feeling it, you're going to be changing how you're talking and how you're even moving. Okay. This sounds really silly, but if I'm in a high-pitched voice and I'm like, well, that makes sense why you're feeling that way, that's not going to be as empathetic as if I go into more of a deep chest voice and slow my words down and go, wow, it makes sense why you'd be in so much pain right now. That's going to be different. Okay. Let's hear. I got one Q&A going, I think. I'm clicking on it, but now it's not letting it pull up. Um, Naya, if you could just check on that and chime in if you can read that, that would be great. I don't know why it's not letting me pull it up right now. Um,
Yeah. Oh, yep. So do you see the Q&A thing at the bottom?
I don't at the bottom. I'm just going to more and then clicking on Q&A, but then it's not pulling up.
Okay, that's weird. It just says, is there a recording of this and are we able to get a copy of it? Yes, it will be up on our YouTube in about a week or two. So there you go.
Great question. Thank you. Okay. So when you are done with the empathizing or validating, I want you to actually do one more check and then just ask, is there anything else that I'm missing? Or do you feel like I'm understanding at least a part of it? Now, if you're like most of the couples I've worked with, there's probably going to be a lot of information. And sometimes all of the emotions, you might be sitting there for like an hour or more. I do normally try to talk with couples and try to rein that into like either only during couples counseling sessions that you guys are talking about that, or if you are going to work on, talking about these things at home, that you are setting time frames of when you're going to talk about it, because a lot of times with that betrayal trauma, it might be the whole day that you're needing to talk about these things. And what the research has shown is that ruminating on that all day and talking about it all day can actually sometimes re-traumatize yourself as the betrayed partner. So I think for the benefit of the relationship and also for yourself, um, try to limit that, but also for the betrayer who stepped outside the relationship, know that this is part of the phase that the Gottmans talk about, which I'll get to here in a second, but it's called the atone phase. And he messed up. And I know for a lot of people who step out of the relationship, there were things that were going on in the relationship beforehand that weren't great. Still doesn't justify the affair, but there's context to the affair too, and we'll get to that as well. But this is part of the atonement phase that you have to go through in order to fix things and show that you're remorseful and making it right. You got to be able to sit there and listen. Okay. I feel like I've hammered this in a lot, so I'm going to keep moving on. So again, the Gottmans, they talk about atone, attune, and attach. Okay. Again, I really recommend couples counseling. This will go a long way with helping you guys move through this, but this is just something to kind of be aware of the process you'll both need to go through in order to heal your relationship. Excuse me. So the atonement phase. This phase involves just getting everything out there. Okay, what often happens, especially with the betrayal trauma, is the person feels like their world just got flipped upside down. Everything they knew about safety and what like the world around them meant about safety has just been ruined. Okay. Sometimes they feel like they don't know what's up from down, like what they thought they knew. Again, the reality of maybe feeling like the marriage was actually really great. I hear people say that sometimes, and this feels like it just came out of the blue. Um, it really, really makes it hard again with the trust aspect. So the atonement phase, you do need to go through the person who stepped out of the relationship or the betrayer has to be willing to answer any questions that the betrayed needs. Okay. I do advise typically to the betrayed to kind of watch their questions because asking about like sexual positions that were used, um, I'm not sure that's really going to help, honestly. So just kind of be aware and try to check yourself when you're maybe not in the crazed phase of like needing the information and there's that anxiety that's pulling you. That's part of the trauma response. Try to let yourself kind of work through that sometimes maybe before asking some questions and try to let yourself sit with what you actually feel like you might need to know. However, though, for the betrayer, if your partner comes and says, no, I need to know what sexual positions were used, you might do a quick check-in of like, are you sure you really want to know that? If they say yes, you tell them. Okay. You tell them everything that they need to know. All right. I do want to give a little bit of context here. What I see with a lot of couples is the betrayer will feel like they did share everything, but of course, through just going through this healing process, um, more details might be thought of later on, or more questions might be asked that jog the person's memory. So a lot of times there's going to be more revelations that occur throughout this process. And that might hurt the betrayed again, thinking that the betrayer was intentionally keeping things from them. That is not always the case. A lot of times it's just part of how the human mind works. We come up and share with, what we feel is important or all that we can remember. And then as life happens, sometimes other memories get jogged up of other details that maybe weren't shared the first time. Betrayer, I don't want you to use that as an excuse. Please try to share everything that you do know. And again, during this atonement phase, it's really important that the betrayed is able to ask and get the story of like what happened. Typically, I say hold off for the betrayer to share details about what led them to an affair because at this phase, anything that is the context of what led to the affair might actually come across as an excuse that you're trying to give, even though it might not be, but it's going to come across that way to the partner who was betrayed just because of that trauma. Okay. During this atonement phase too, it's really, really important that you're doing that listener role that I just described because there's going to be emotions that come up. And the betrayer's job is to sit there with those emotions, do that listener role, reflect back. And that's again, you're going to start building the trust back of you actually can be safe with me. And this is a way I can show that I'm not running from you. I'm here with you. I'm not leaving you alone, even though I'll be real. Betrayal trauma is exhausting for both partners. It's not fun. It is constant and it takes a lot of time and energy, okay? But again, showing that you're willing to do some of that work is important. The other thing too, for the betrayed, what they need to be doing in this atonement phase that's super important is trying to look for signs that the person is being different here. Okay. So there's an analogy I like to use that marriage 1.0 at this point is gone. And this is going to be the grieving phase of that marriage, that your original marriage that you said your I do's to is no longer gone. There's not that innocence there anymore. There's this affair that's occurred, and that's going to create emotional scars that are going to carry on throughout life, quite frankly. Doesn't mean that you can't heal from them, but just like most scars, there might be some sensitivity. And that's something that when you're establishing marriage 2.0, which is what I'm starting to teach you guys to do today, is with marriage 2.0, there needs to be sensitivity around those triggers and be there for each other while you're going through all this. Okay, want to give you a little warning here. A lot of times during the atonement phase, since the emotions are so high and for a real valid reason, um, the betrayers a lot of times are going to feel a feeling of defensiveness because most times what I see is the betrayed is going to come out swinging with a lot of criticisms, anger, not always, but it can occur. And a lot of times when somebody's feeling blamed or attacked, their natural response is defensiveness. Um, how to counteract that defensiveness? Oh, let me explain what defensiveness is too. So according to the Gottmans, it's victimizing yourself to ward off the perceived attack or reversing the blame. Okay. So I'd be like, whoa, why are you coming at me for that? I actually never did that. I only did this one thing with that person. And it's like, okay, doesn't matter. Getting to the root of it is your partner is in pain and they're angry. So let's address the anger. That's kind of part of the emotional iceberg I was trying to explain about. If we focus too much at the top, we're not going to really get anywhere with it. We all get under the surface with that listening role. And also taking responsibility is going to go a long way as well. Okay. So remember with the listener role, just reminding you about this again, postpone the agenda and hear the pain, ask open-ended questions, summarize and validate. Okay. There's a great book too that I just want to throw out to you guys. FYI, for those of you who don't know me, if you do know me, you know this about me. I'm not big into reading books. I feel like most of the material and resources that I gain are from like seminars or, um, you know, uh, webinars and stuff like that. But this is actually a book that is super short, and this is how to help your spouse heal from your affair. So again, it's a little bit more towards the betrayer, but they've got some great resources in there. This lady, Linda J. McDonald, she talks about the 3 R's, and I think this is really helpful to know as well. She says that the betrayer needs to be resilient, and kind of what I'm talking about with this betrayal trauma. It's going to be activated a lot, and you have to be resilient enough to that you're just going to sit through it and be there for your spouse, even though these emotions are high, and it's going to be, it can be months, even sometimes years of these emotions that are just coming at you time and time again. And you have to be able to sit there and be with your spouse. I also really recommend individual therapy for the betrayer because that can be really hard to do. Being able to differentiate yourself enough to be able to hold space for your spouse while you're also getting triggered with the defensiveness can sometimes be really hard as well. Being realistic too. It's hard. I don't have my notes at the bottom. I was trying to find out a way to do that, but the realistic side of things is also being realistic about here. I'm gonna go to the book. I have it right here because I can't see my notes right now. But the realistic part of it, excuse me, there we go. Okay. So the realistic side is that, again, realizing that marriage 1.0 is gone and that the innocence is gone. So not having expectations that just overnight your partner is going to trust you again, but we're being realistic that you're going to hold on to hope for a second chance, but know that that second chance isn't just going to come overnight and trust isn't going to come overnight. It's going to take a lot of work and sometimes even years to rebuild trust. So being realistic with that and also being respectful. And what I really love that this book says is that the person that was betrayed is kind of the one that gets to set the guidelines moving forward with the relationship. Since the betrayer wasn't the one that was respectful with the boundaries, the betrayed now gets to set the new boundaries for the relationship. And oftentimes that's a cost of privacy for the betrayer or feeling very controlled in the relationship. So I've heard examples of, having to constantly share your location with your spouse or them needing you to, text pictures of what you're doing at that moment when they text you. This is part of atonement. This is part of healing your relationship. You've lost the trust, and with a good reason. This is how you're going to earn it back. And it's going to be really hard, but this is how you do it. So, step two, and I'm going to try to go through this fast. I know this is time is just flying by. So, I'm just looking to see if there's been any other questions. Okay. So attune kind of equals repair here. So a lot of the work you're going to be doing in the attune phase is you're actually going to go back, and this is when you're going to start talking about other incidents, not necessarily just the affair. So, like I said before, there's a context with maybe what led a person to step outside the relationship. It's not an excuse, but this is where you can talk about those of, okay, I felt like I wasn't connected. I kept wanting to do date nights and they just never happened. I kept feeling like I was put behind the kids and everyone else came first before me. Those are conversations you can have. It can be about the affair as well, where, the spouse is talking about how hard it is to trust now and um, how this has affected their self-esteem and how hard it is for them to even get up. Maybe they're struggling with some depression now from this. So just being able to, again, come together and hear each other and start working on a game plan to like how you're going to fix things now comes after the atonement phase, and this is part of the attune phase. There's more to it, but again, I'm trying to go kind of fast. There's this video. If you Google uh, bids for connection from the Gottmans, you can watch this video. But in essence, I do want to talk about excuse me. We're going to talk about bids for connection. So again, some things for addressing issues from the past is missed bids for connection. So the Gottmans talk about bids for connection as anything that is looking for like attachment or connection. And it can be something as simple as there's a sigh when you're sitting next to your partner. Now you have the choice to either keep going about what you're doing or go, oh, babe, what's wrong? By you reaching out and saying, babe, what's wrong? That's connecting with a bid for connection. The sigh is a bid of I'm trying to communicate that I want to talk with you, I want to be there with you. It can be verbal or nonverbal. Um, I can't remember the exact statistics right now. They say them in the video, so again, you can watch that. But um, I think they said that the marriages that are most successful are when couples have at least like 70 to 80% of the time that they're connecting with the bids from their partner. And the relationships that do typically end within 7 years, only 33% of those bids are met with connection. So a lot of times what can go into affairs is missed bids for connection is where it kind of starts. And then if you have a friend and that friend's starting to give you connection with the bids you might be doing there, um, that can start pulling a person away. Negative comparisons too, like if you're not happy with your relationship and you find somebody who is making you happy, again, just when you start comparing, I think I've already talked about the negative comparisons, that can be an issue. And again, these are things to address as well in the attune phase, and then seeking solutions from others. Four horsemen, I'm not going to get too much into this, but Google the horsemen if you're interested in their antidotes. And that can also help with conversations and getting your marriage or relationship back on the right path, or even just avoiding negative paths in the future. The last step of this healing process is attach. And attachment, okay, I'm going to go really fast. Attachment is when you're trying to find ways to connect and now keep that connection moving forward. So a lot of times in the attachment phase, we're going to talk about what the Gottmans call rituals of connection. So that's finding things for like, okay, how are we going to do date nights moving forward? How are we going to, uh, you know, connect each day, even when we've got a million kids that we're taking care of. Um, Talking about sex is super important too during this phase. A lot of times when an affair has been revealed, sex can sometimes stop. Sometimes I've seen it go the opposite way, and the person that was betrayed actually wants more sex to feel more of that connection and safety. If sex has stopped though, or even if it still is going, it's super important to talk about sex, and have that be more of an intimate thing than just a physical thing. So there is a great app called the Gottman Card Decks. It's a free app on Android and Apple that you can download, and they've got some great questions that you can go over with your partner at any time. There's great open-ended questions about sex on there as well. But just a few topics that you can even discuss with your partner, like your favorite places to be touched, how you prefer sex to be initiated, how you prefer to initiate, best time of day. Sometimes people are more morning people, sometimes more afternoon or evening people. Desired frequency of sex, how to reject sex when you're not in the mood, and then just come up with your own. So, um, talk about establishing new patterns of connection. That can be date nights. Gottmans also recommend like a weekly meeting where you talk more about the business of the relationship, how the relationship's doing, like financial things, just everything that takes the relationship and family to keep running, and addressing any issues that might have been had during the week that in the chaos of life you didn't have time to talk about. You have this meeting set every week that you can kind of do those check-ins. They also talk about stress reducing conversations to have daily. It's going to help you again keep that connection flowing from day to day, where you're actually able to come home to each other every day and be able to just talk about the outside stressors of life, what happened that was stressful with other family members, friends, at work, kids, anything. You have that moment that you can reconnect. The Gottmans do recommend 20 minutes of that a day. I say if you can even do 5 minutes, that's great. Just find a way to still connect and check in with each other about your day. Um, Finally, I'm just going to end on this slide right here. Like marriage 2.0 is possible. And I cannot tell you the amount of couples I've worked with that when both are dedicated to working on and fixing the marriage, I've had so many couples come back and tell me that their marriage is sweeter and better than it was before. I even had one couple tell me that they're grateful that they went through an affair, which they never thought they'd ever say, because it opened their mind to problems that were in the relationship, and they were able to find resolutions and now come closer and be more connected than they ever were before. So I just want to give you hope. There's hope out there. Um, Definitely try to get some professional help, but there's ways to heal, and many people have. Okay. Here's just some citations if anyone's interested, citations for images as well. But here's my contact information too. I do have a little bit of a wait list right now, but if you are interested in working with me, you can reach out to the phone number listed or my email as well. Or if you just need some resources or referrals to other people too, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help anywhere there. I think I did see a few more things pop up in the Q&A, and I'm at the end of my presentation, so now is the time for Q&A anywhere. So Naya, what are those questions?
Okay, so one of them is, did you say bids and that it wasn't clear on their end? I'm not sure.
Ah,
Is
yes, bid, BIDS, bids for connection, like you're bidding in an auction. So bids.
And then the other one was there a mid-presentation questionnaire? She never saw it. There wasn't one. We just had you guys asking. We usually do the questions at the end, and then I have you type them in throughout the presentation, but we did not have a mid-presentation questionnaire for today. Okay, so if that is all for today, we just want to say thank you so much to Brooke for that awesome presentation. And thank you to everybody that joined on the webinar. We're so grateful for your questions and everyone's participation. Once again, if you did join this webinar for the CEU credit, make sure you stay on until the end of the webinar for your survey to pop up, and then you'll get that certificate emailed to you. Or you can email the Utah Marriage Commission at marriagecommission@usu.edu for your survey. And then once you complete that, you will attain that certification. Just a reminder that once I end the webinar, everybody will disappear. Have a great night, everybody, and thank you so much, Brooke, again.
Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for attending. I appreciate it.